We had radios, but some of these radios were from World War I. Somebody had to grind them and start them up to make them work, and it was impossible. So we'd send out what were called reconnaissance units, recon units. I took 7 men, a half-track, and a Jeep. Now, a half-track, for those of you who don't know what a half-track is, it's a huge, huge vehicle, all steel. The front tires are tires you see on tractor trailers here, but there were no tires on the back. Instead, there were tracks, like you see on a tank. That's why they called it a half-track. I mounted a 50 caliber machine gun on that, because if we ran the aircraft, a 50 would be good to fight them off. On the Jeep, we mounted a 30 caliber machine gun, and we took off. First day, we slept out in the woods. The second day, we're in this beautiful wooded area, and one of my soldiers said, "What's that terrible smell?" And I said, "I don't know, but I smell it too." And we had our handkerchiefs, we were holding, whoever had that picture, and we're wiping our nose and holding it. And as we proceeded, the smell got stronger and stronger. We made a left turn in this wooded area, and suddenly on my right, you could see this 30 or 40 foot red brick chimney, with white smoke billowing out of the top of it. And the smell became very, very intense. And as we got closer through my glasses, I could see this fence. It was actually 3 fences, and barbed wire along the top, and then there were gun emplacements every 75 or so yards. And through my glasses, I could see machine guns in there. And I looked and I said to one of my soldiers, I said, the corporal, I said, "I think this is a prisoner of war camp." He says, "Well, why do you say that?" I said, "I think it's, look, take my glasses." And he looked and he said, "I see movement behind the fences." Now, we had no idea. Nobody had told us there was such a thing as a concentration camp, where they were killing people, actually bringing people in there, slaughtering them, burning their bodies, and destroying people. We had no idea of this. Oh, the Army had sessions. The Army had plenty of sessions, even when you come off combat for a 2-day arrest or 3-day arrest, they'd bring up people and they'd teach you about sexual conduct and this and that and so forth and so on. But nobody said there's a thing called a concentration camp where they're literally murdering people. So as we moved up closer, I could see off to the right this big structure, which later we found was actually the entrance to this place. And we had to make a decision what to do. So I said, "I tell you what, in the meantime, off to the right and the south, we could hear the booming of cannon. And we knew that they were American because you can tell by the sound. You believe it or not, you could tell the difference in weaponry by the sound they make. For example, the German small arm fire, we knew it was a Schmauser as opposed to our Thompson and what have you. We knew that the big 90 millimeter was different than the 88 millimeter and so forth. And we knew that there had to be Patton's army coming up from the south. So I took a shot and decided, let's go in this place. So I took the half track and put it in front, put the Jeep in the back, and I said, "Okay, guys, wait, let's see if we knock out one of these gun emplacements." So we turned to 50, not the 30 caliber, 50 caliber machine gun on one of those gun emplacements and fired one round at it, and blew up, knocked the thing apart, and the gun went flying up there, and nobody was in it. I looked through my glasses to the right, the place was empty, there's nobody in it. So I said, "Okay, let's go." So we put the half track in front, we plowed right through the fences, we get into this place, we jumped down off of our vehicles. I want you to imagine, I was 6 feet 2 inches tall. As I told you, I was 190 pounds. I was muscle and bone, I had 3 grenades on my left chest, had a .45 automatic on my hip, had a knife in my bottom boot, toward my boot, that I used to shave with. That's how fine it was. I used to hone it all the time, and I could shave with it. I had a carbine in my hand with 60 shells in it, 30 and 30. And we move in. And here comes this group of, I've told this story 1,000,000 times. And I always get to this point when I have a problem. And the problem is, I want to say these people, but But they really weren't people. These zombies, they weren't zombies. These were the relics of what they had done to these human beings prior to burning them to death. They started inching their way toward us and screaming and hollering, Americana, Americana. And one of them came, and I started backing up, scared to death. Why was I scared to death? Remember I told you about Holland in the barn? When I was in that barn, I got lice. I got lice so bad, I used to take that knife and I'd scrape the skin like off my hand, arm. I had lice in my hair. And they took me back to an aid station. They shaved every bit of hair off my body and used some kind of compound so I got rid of it. And I thought to myself, these people are going to put their arms around me so I'm going to get lice again. Little did I realize that was nothing. This place was infested with typhus and other diseases that were real killers. But I didn't know about that. All I knew is I'm going to get lice and I ain't got no way. So one little man, he was probably 5 feet tall. He probably weighed 60 pounds. I'm not exaggerating. And I've got pictures here, some I've taken. One is of myself in there, and you can see what they look like. He sidled up to me. He had his little hat in his hand. He looked up at me, and he said to me in German, "Seid Amerikaner Soldaten, jawohl?" I understand German. And I said to him, "Are you American soldiers?" And I said to him, not in German, but in Yiddish. Yiddish is a language that Jews of Eastern Europe spoke. And I learned it from my grandparents, my maternal grandparents. And I said, "Jawohl, wir sind Amerikaner Soldaten und ich bin ein Yid." Yes, we're American soldiers and I'm a Jew. He reached and grabbed my hands over my gun and he said to me in Yiddish, "What took you so long to get here?" I completely dissolved. The tears poured out of my eyes. I couldn't restrain myself. One of my guys came to me, grabbed me, and said, "What happened? What did he do? What is? Are you okay?" And I said, "I'm all right, I'm okay, I'm gonna get myself together." Because when he said that to me, the thought that went through my mind was, if my mother had not come to America in 1913, before World War I from Lithuania, and my father, during World War I, as a soldier in France, from Egypt, I could be one of those shells of a person, one of those skeletons that were moving around in there. I could have been one of them, or the pile of ashes. Well, we got ourselves together, and I said to him, and speaking him in Yiddish, "What is that chimney with smoke?" He said, "It's a crematorium." So we went up, and sure enough, they had, I think it was 6 sleds, steel sleds. They'd put 2 or 3 bodies on, they'd shove them, burn them up, and they had piles of ashes, and they were just scattered. And so we blew them, we took grenades, and we blew them up so that they wouldn't function. In the streets of this place, it's, by the way, it's called Buchenwald concentration camp. And this was a sub-camp. They had piles of bodies, 5, 6, 7, 8 feet high, just bodies, waiting to be cremated. And people lying on the street and so forth, just some still breathing, some weren't. And if they were lying there, the other people would take, if they had shoes or whatever clothes, most of them just naked bodies. And while we were walking through there, with these handkerchiefs over our faces because the snow was unbelievable, one of our men hollered, "Down!" Now, when you're in a line and there's somebody hollers down, you try to bury yourself in the ground. The reason they're hollering down is either it's incoming artillery or somebody's been spotted or so you try to avoid being shot or whatever. And so we hit the ground. And this little man, Joseph, he looks at me again in Yiddish, he said, "Have no fear. They're rats." Because one of my guys noticed that among the pile of bodies, there was like movement. But he was telling there were rats in there like this, and they were eating on the bodies and causing these bodies to move. And that's what he was saying. Well, the sights that we saw were sights you cannot believe. I've got some pictures if you want to look at them. You can look at them. But It was just the most horrible experience that any of us had. And we were walking around like zombies ourselves, not being able to really comprehend what was going on. We could not find any German soldiers. The inmates did capture one guy who was a guard, and they hung him right in front of us. One of my corporals said, "Are you gonna let him do that?" And I said, "Let him do it. Don't hang him. It's too good for him." And we stayed overnight in our trucks and posted guard on the opening and the fencing because we didn't want these people from running in the countryside. The next day, the Third Army came up, Patton's Army, a tank corps. It's the first soldiers I had seen that were all African Americans. The first one. I've seen African American soldiers in World War II, but they were either driving for the Red Ball Express, the trucks that brought us ammunition and food and stuff, but never combat units. And these were combat units. All the tankers were African American. And they came into the camp, jumped down off their vehicles, and one, a major, came over and he threatened to court-martial me. And I looked at him and I said, "Well, you can court-martial him, but I did what I thought was right." He said, "You're killing these people." And what he meant was, I made a mistake. I thought we were to be helpful. I sent the guys back to the vehicles when we came in there. We brought back K rations, jerry cans of water, and we're feeding the people. Okay, we would open up a can of K rations of eggs or Spam or something, and we'd give it to them. And they would eat it, and they'd just collapse and die because their bodies could not adjust to it. Bars of chocolate. And so he said that he was going to court-martial me for killing these people. Anyway, it was just talk with him because I guess we were all so completely destroyed by what we were seeing that I guess many of us didn't realize what we were seeing to each other. And the next day, General Eisenhower, General Patton, General Bradley, a few others came up, and they took pictures of everything. And General Eisenhower made that famous statement, "Anybody who has a camera, anybody who can make note of what's here, I want you to do so, because sometime in the future, some so-and-so is going to say this never happened." And it's true. There are many people who say this never happened. I was there. I saw it. There's a picture right there among those pictures. So the third day we had to leave. I had to get back to my unit. So we left. I called in and said, "We're coming in." And 2 days after that, I made another mistake. We took 2 German soldiers prisoners. And I made the mistake of taking 2 of the fellows, I had 7 men with me, who had been with me in the camp, and said, "Take these guys back to a stockade." Because when you take prisoners and you're on a line, you can't carry them with you. When you tie them up and drag them, you send them back to a stockade. I should never have sent them back with these 2 guys who had been exposed to what we'd seen. Because within a half an hour, 45 minutes, they were back. I said, "What happened? We're in prison." They tried to escape, Sergeant shot them. I knew it was a lie. I knew it was a lie. And I would have probably done the same thing. Because that night, we took a German major prisoner. They bring him in front of me, and I was in command, because we lost a lieutenant and whatever. But usually, the upper rated, I was a master sergeant. We were usually in charge of the platoons and the companies even, because we lost some officers right and left. So we take this German major prisoner, they bring him up in front of me, big strapping guy, and I said to one of the fellows, "Did you check him out?" He said, "No." Now, when I said check him out, what I meant was, the worst of Germans were the SS troops, the storm troops. These guys were killers. They're the ones that ran these camps. These are the ones who killed the American prisoners of war during the Battle of Bulge, machine gunned 150 prisoners, all of them with their arms tied behind their backs, and they just machine gunned them to death. And we had no use for SS troops, those officers. How could we tell when I said you check them? Under their left armpit, there would be two jagged tattoos, lightnings, and that meant SS troops, stormtroopers. And very frankly, we call one, we'd shoot, just like you would a wild dog. Now it sounds terrible, but these were the times, this is what it was. They bring this guy in front of me. I looked at him and I said to him, "Do you understand English?" He said, "Jawohl," in German, yes. I said, "My name is Master Sergeant Saul Goldstein. I'm the United States Army Infantry, and I'm a Jew, and you're my prisoner." He looked at me, he was my height, and he spit right in my face, right down the right side of my face right here. And he said to me in German, "You verdammte jüdische Schweinhund, you dirty Jew pig." I just instinctively, my leg came up, the knife came out, and I cut him. And we threw him in the woods. But before we did, we checked under his arm, and sure enough, it was SS. He had it with him, so I felt better. But I always thought back, I always thought back to that day, did I do the right thing? People have asked me, "Did you ever kill anybody?" When you're in combat, you see somebody move, you fire. Somebody drops, they don't drop, you don't know. But this was a hand-to-hand thing that never happened to me before. And the guy wasn't armed or anything, but it was just the moment and what happened. And I thought, why did I do it? Well, and I thought to myself over the years, did I think that maybe he would have taken me and put me in that camp where those people were? That wasn't going to happen, as long as I was able to resist. And so all these thoughts went through my mind. But over the years, it's over 70 years, it's been with me all these years. Anyway, we moved out, we moved in, we went into Czechoslovakia. We ended in Pilsen, Czechoslovakia. The colonel said to me one morning, he said, "Sergeant, war's over." I said, "What do you mean the war's over?" "It's all over, the Germans surrendered." I said, "German surrender?" "Yeah." I said, "That's it?" He said, "That's it. Go home." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're going home tomorrow." I said, "What do you mean going home tomorrow?" "Well, you went home by virtue of points. You got so many points from months overseas. You got so many points for days of combat." Well, I had enough points to come home the next day from my years of my months overseas and my days of combat. So I could have come home the very next day, but the war was over. And it was almost 4 years. And I said, I can't go home. He said, "What do you mean you can't go home?" I said, "Well, I just can't go home." And I said, "What are you going to do?" He said, "They're sending me to Paris. I'm setting up a transportation unit. That we're going to get all this equipment we can and send it to the Pacific, where the Americans are still fighting against Japan." I said, "Well, take me with you." I said, "Because I can type." And I could. I'd learned to type at City. And I said, "I'm a good typist. I'll go with you." I hadn't typed in, I don't know. So he said, "Are you sure? You go home." I said, "I'm not going." And the bottom line is I went to Paris. I lived in Paris for 7 months. Let me tell you something, folks. Nothing could have been finer. I had an apartment. I had a vehicle at my disposal. It was heaven. It was really heaven. I had a bottle of wine every night in my bed. Anything I wanted. It was right there in Paris for the 7 months. And finally, my mom kept bugging, and so I came home. Came home January 14, 1946. Fort Meade, where I'd gone in, I came back. Already gone. This captain says, "Okay, Sergeant, tomorrow everybody goes home." I said, No, I'm going home today." He said, "No, you're going tomorrow." I said, "Captain, I'm 45 minutes from my house. I'm going home now." He said, "No, you're not." I reached up and I had all these medals and junk all over, and I grabbed everything, I ripped them all off, and I threw them at him, and I said, "Shove them. I'm out of here right now." And I started to turn around, and he said, "Stop." And I looked at him, my hands are bald, and I knew I'm going to wind up in the stockade, but I'm going home. And he said, "I'll let you go home today. Sign this paper." I said, "Okay." So I took it. I didn't even ask him what it was. And he said to me, "You're re-upping for 4 more years in the reserves." So I just signed it and handed it over and left. That was January 14, 1946. I went home. Things happened. Met the lady I'm married, most beautiful woman in the world, 3 sons, etc., etc. Then I got a letter saying, your